Document Part 4. The next morning, the team woke to a world transformed. Overnight, a fresh layer of snow had blanketed the ruins, smoothing over jagged edges and filling in cracks. The air was crisp and still, with only the faintest whisper of wind stirring the frost-covered trees. Emily stepped outside, her boots crunching softly against the icy surface. She took a deep breath, letting the cold fill her lungs as she scanned the horizon. Greenland's vast emptiness stretched out before her, endless and untilled. Inside, Laura was already packing up their gear while Daniel brewed a pot of coffee on a portable stove. The aroma filled the small room, cutting through the chill. Emily joined them, wrapping her hands around a steaming mug as they discussed their plan for the day. "We should keep exploring the area," Emily suggested. "If there are more carvings here, they might lead us to something bigger, an artifact, or maybe even a clue about where the Guardians went." Laura nodded. "It's an old cave system not far from here. Local hunters sometimes use it as shelter. If anything survived the centuries, that's probably where it would be." Daniel glanced at the map spread out on the table. "How long will it take to get there?" "A couple of hours, if we move fast," Laura replied. "Rough, so don't expect a smooth ride." After finishing their breakfast, the team loaded their supplies onto sleds attached to the snowmobiles. Laura led the way, weaving expertly through narrow paths and avoiding patches of unstable ice. The journey was grueling, but the promise of discovery kept them focused. As they traveled deeper into the wilderness, the landscape grew increasingly desolate, with towering cliffs rising on either side and shadows stretching long across the snow. When they finally reached the entrance to the cave system, the sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting everything in shades of orange and purple. The opening yawned wide, its mouth framed by jagged rocks and icicles that glinted like teeth in the fading light. A faint breeze carried the scent of damp earth and stone from within. "Stay close," Laura warned as she lit a lantern. Caves can be tricky. Some tunnels collapse without warning. Emily adjusted the strap of her backpack and followed Laura inside, Daniel bringing up the rear. The temperature dropped immediately, and the sound of their footsteps echoed eerily. Off the walls, stalactites hung from the ceiling, dripping water that froze mid-air into delicate spikes. The beam of Laura's lantern illuminated strange formations, twisted columns of rock, shimmering pools of ice and veins of quartz sparkling faintly in the dim light. They moved cautiously, checking side passages and scanning the walls for any signs of carvings or artifacts. At first, there was nothing but raw, unmarked stone. But then, as they rounded a corner, Emily stopped abruptly. "There," she whispered, pointing to a section of wall partially obscured by frost. Embedded in the rock were faint marking symbols similar to those they'd seen before. Laura handed her the lantern, and Emily stepped closer, brushing away layers of ice with gloved hands. Slowly, the carvings emerged, a series of intricate patterns depicting humans standing beneath glowing shapes.
And like the earlier carvings.
These included additional details, swirling lines connecting the figures, forming what looked like a network or web. In the center of the design was a large circle pulsing with energy in the depiction. "It's like the stories you told us," Emily said, turning to Laura. "This must be the great web your grandmother mentioned." Laura stared at the carving, her expression unreadable. "I've never seen anything like this before. It's beautiful." Daniel snapped photos of the scene, his camera clicking softly in the silence. "Do you think this is what connected humans to the Guardians? This web?" "It makes sense," Emily replied. "If the Guardians maintained balance, then this could represent their influence spreading throughout the natural world. Maybe it's how they communicated or protected us." As they continued exploring, the team found more carvings scattered throughout the cave system. Each one added depth to the story, revealing fragments of a relationship between humans and the Guardians that spanned millennia. One image showed humans planting crops while animals grazed peacefully nearby, all encircled by the glowing web. Another depicted hunters returning home laden with food, their faces serene rather than triumphant. But amidst the harmony, there were hints of tension. In one particularly striking carving, the web appeared frayed, its lines broken and jagged. Humans stood apart from animals, their expressions wary and defensive. Above them, the glowing shapes seemed distant, almost faded. "What happened here?" Daniel asked, tracing the damaged web with his finger. "It looks like something went wrong." Emily frowned, studying the scene closely. "Maybe humanity started relying less on the Guardians and more on ourselves. We developed tools, weapons, agriculture, all the things that allowed us to survive without needing protection. Over time, the connection weakened, and the Guardians left," Laura added quietly. "That's what the legends say. When humans stopped listening, they withdrew." The idea weighed heavily on the group. If the Guardians had indeed departed because humanity no longer valued their role, then the consequences could have been catastrophic. Without their guidance, humans might have disrupted the delicate balance of nature, leading to conflicts with other species and, eventually, with each other as they pressed on. The air grew colder and the tunnels narrowed. At one point, the path split into two directions. Laura hesitated, consulting her compass and instincts before choosing the left fork. After several minutes of walking, they emerged into a massive chamber unlike anything they'd encountered so far. The ceiling soared high above them, supported by natural pillars of stone. Icicles hung like chandeliers, refracting the lantern, light into rainbows that danced across the walls. In the center of the room stood a pedestal made of dark, polished rock. Resting atop it was a small object, its surface gleaming faintly despite the dim illumination. Emily approached cautiously, her heart pounding. The object was a shard of crystal, roughly the size of her palm. Its edges were sharp and precise, as though cut by a master craftsman. Etched into its surface were symbols identical to those in the carvings. But here, they seemed alive, shifting subtly under the light. "What is this?" Daniel whispered, awe evident in his voice. "I don't know," Emily admitted, reaching out tentatively, "but it feels important." Before she could touch it, a low hum filled the chamber, resonating through the floor and walls. The sound grew louder, vibrating in their chests until it became almost unbearable. Suddenly, the crystal flared with blinding light, forcing them to shield their eyes. When the glow subsided, the team blinked in confusion. Standing before them were translucent figures, their forms shimmering like heat waves. They had no distinct features, only vague outlines that pulsed with an inner radiance. Their presence was both mesmerizing and unnerving. "You seek answers," a lot of the figures said, its voice echoing as if spoken by many at once. "But knowledge comes with risk." Emily swallowed hard, finding her voice. "Who are you?" "You the Guardians?" "We are the Sentinels," the figure replied. "Protectors of balance. Guardians of harmony." Laura gripped her lantern tightly, her knuckles white. "Why have you shown yourselves now?" "The threads of the web grow thin," another sentinel intoned. "Your kind has strayed far from the path, yet some among you remember. You tread, carefully seeking understanding. For this, we offer guidance, but beware. Not all who seek truth wish to preserve it." The word sent a shiver down Emily's spine. She wanted to ask more too, demand explanations, but the sentinels began to fade, their forms dissolving into wisps of light. Before disappearing completely, they left one final message. The web may yet be repaired, but the choice lies with you. Silence fell over the chamber, broken only by the sound of dripping water. The crystal lay inert once more, its glow extinguished. Emily stared at it, her mind racing. Had they truly just encountered the Guardians or Sentinels of legend? And if so, what did their warning mean? "We need to take this back with us," Emily said finally, wrapping the crystal carefully in a cloth. "It's proof. Proof that everything we've been searching for is real." Daniel nodded, though his face was pale. "It means we're not done yet. There's more to learn." As they made their way out of the cave, the weight of the encounter settled over them. The Sentinel's appearance had confirmed their suspicions, but it had also raised new questions. What had caused the web to weaken? Could it truly be repaired? Most importantly, who else might be watching? Back at camp, Laura gazed into the flames of their fire, her thoughts distant. "My grandmother used to say that the Watcher's test Those who find them, she murmured, to see if they're worthy. Maybe this is our test. Emily didn't respond. She sat beside the fire, cradling the wrapped crystal in her lap. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew one thing for certain. The mystery of humanity's place in the natural world was far from solved, and the answers they sought might change everything. Document. Part to the screen in front of Daniel flickered as he rewound the footage. Emily leaned closer, her breath fogging up the cold glass of the monitor for a moment before she pulled back. The video showed a stretch of forest blanketed in snow, silent and still, except for the occasional gust of wind shaking the branches. At first glance, there didn't seem to be anything unusual, just trees and shadows. But then Daniel paused the playback. There, he said, pointing at a faint shape partially buried beneath layers of snow near the base of a tree. Do you see that? Emily squinted, adjusting her glasses. It took her a moment to make out what he was referring to, a dark, irregular object jutting out from the ground. The camera angle wasn't perfect, but it looked like part of something. Larger, perhaps a rock or a piece of wood, except it didn't quite fit with its surroundings. Its edges were too smooth, almost deliberate. What is that? Emily murmured, more to herself than to Daniel. I don't know, Daniel replied, scratching his head. But whatever it is, it looks man-made, or maybe not man-made. I mean, it's weird. Emily straightened up, her curiosity piqued. We need to check it out. The two bundled up in heavy coats, gloves, and boots before heading outside. The temperature had dropped even further since morning, and the air felt sharp against their skin. They followed the coordinates from the camera trap, trudging through knee-deep snow until they reached the spot. Sure enough, there it was. Same strange object poking out from the ground. Kneeling down, Emily brushed away some of the snow with gloved hands. As more of the object came into view, her heart began to race. It wasn't a rock or a piece of wood at all. It was stone, yes, but carved intricately with symbols and patterns that spiraled across its surface. The craftsmanship was unlike anything she'd ever seen before, too precise to be natural, yet too old to belong to any modern civilization. This isn't random, Emily whispered, running her fingers lightly over the carvings. It's intentional. Someone or something made this. Daniel crouched beside her, peering at the markings. What do you think it means? Not sure, Emily admitted, but these symbols, they look like they're telling a story. Back at the lab later that evening, Emily carefully cleaned off the artifact, revealing even more details hidden beneath centuries of dirt and ice. The carvings covered every inch of the stone, forming elaborate scenes that seemed to flow seamlessly into one another. Some depicted humans standing alongside animals, wolves, bears, birds, all appearing peaceful, almost cooperative. Others showed humans surrounded by glowing shapes that hovered in the air, indistinct but clearly significant. One image stood out to Emily in particular. In it, a group of human figures stood together, their arms raised toward the sky. Above them floated several luminous forms, radiating light that bathed the scene in an ethereal glow. Around the edges of the carving, smaller symbols repeated themselves, forming what might have been some kind of language. These aren't just decorations, Emily said aloud, though no one else was in the room. They're communicating something. She snapped photos of the artifact and sent them to Dr. Robert Klein, a linguist and historian known for his work deciphering ancient scripts. Robert had spent decades studying lost civilizations. If anyone could make sense of the mysterious carvings, it was him. A few days passed before Robert responded. When he did, it was with a mix of excitement and caution. These symbols are fascinating, he wrote in his email. I've never seen anything quite like them. Based on your description and the photos, they appear to tell a narrative, but it's fragmented. Whoever created this intended to convey important information, but parts of it may be missing. Encouraged by his response, Emily arranged for Robert to visit the facility. He arrived a week later, lugging a suitcase filled with books, papers, and tools. A tall man with graying hair and a perpetually thoughtful expression, Robert wasted no time getting to work. For hours each day, he studied the artifact under bright lights, sketching diagrams and jotting down notes. Meanwhile, Emily and Daniel continued exploring the area around the discovery site, hoping to find additional clues. Their search led them deeper into the forest, where the trees grew thicker and the snow lay untouched. One afternoon, while climbing a ridge, Daniel spotted something glinting in the distance. "Emily!" he shouted, waving her over. "Look at this." She hurried to join him, slipping slightly on the icy slope. When she reached him, she saw what had caught his attention: a shard of stone protruding from the ground, similar to the original artifact, but smaller and broken. Kneeling down, she dug around it carefully, uncovering more fragments scattered nearby. By the time they returned to the lab, they had collected several pieces, all bearing the same intricate carvings. Robert examined them eagerly, piecing them together like a puzzle. Slowly, a clearer picture began to emerge. The story, Robert explained during one of their nightly discussions, seems to revolve around humans and their relationship with other creatures. From what I can tell, these carvings suggest that humans were once protected not by weapons or technology, but by something else entirely. Something else, Emily echoed, frowning. Like what? Robert hesitated, choosing his words carefully. It's hard to say without seeing the full text, but the recurring theme involves those glowing shapes you noticed earlier. My best guess is that they represent some kind of guardian figures, beings who ensured humanity's safety. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Guardians? You mean like angels or something? Not necessarily, Robert replied. They could be mythical representations, yes, but they might also symbolize real entities, perhaps forces of nature or even extraterrestrial life. Without more context, it's impossible to determine exactly what they are. Emily listened intently, her mind racing. If Robert was right, and the carvings hinted at a profound truth about humanity's place in the world, one that challenged everything she thought she knew. But as intriguing as the idea was, it left her with more questions than answers. What happened to these guardians? She asked finally. And why did they stop protecting us? Robert sighed, flipping through his notes. That's the problem. The final section of the carving is damaged, breaks off abruptly. Whatever conclusion the creators intended to leave behind is lost to time. Despite the setback, Emily refused to give up. She couldn't shake the feeling that the artifacts were only the beginning, that somewhere out there, more pieces of the puzzle waited to be found. And if they could uncover them, they might finally understand why humans were the only species without natural predators. As the days turned into weeks, the team redoubled their efforts, driven by a shared sense of purpose. Little did they know, their search would lead them far beyond Alaska and into realms they could scarcely imagine. Document Part 3. The discovery of the second set of artifacts had injected new energy into the team. Emily, Daniel, and Robert spent long hours in the lab, piecing together fragments of stone and analyzing every detail they could extract from. The carvings, symbols, were complex, but Robert's expertise slowly began to unravel their meaning. He identified recurring pattern shapes that represented humans, animals, and those glowing guardian figures, and started mapping out a rough timeline of events. It's like a storybook, Robert said one evening as he spread sketches across the table. Each carving tells part of a larger narrative. From what I can gather, these guardians weren't just protectors, they were mediators. They kept the balance between humans and nature. Emily leaned forward, her eyes scanning the drawings. Balance. You mean they stopped other animals from seeing us as prey? Exactly, Robert replied, but it goes deeper than that. These carvings suggest that humans once lived in harmony with the natural world, not because we were stronger or smarter, but because the guardians ensured it. They shielded us, guided us, maybe even influenced how other species interacted with us. Daniel frowned, tapping his pencil against the edge of the table. If that's true, then why did they stop? What changed? Robert hesitated, glancing down at the damaged section of the artifact. That's the missing piece. Whatever happened after this point is unclear. It's possible the Guardians left Tor, maybe humanity did something to break the bond. The conversation lingered in the air, heavy with unanswered questions. Emily felt a growing sense of urgency. If the Guardians had played such a crucial role in humanity's survival, then understanding their disappearance might hold the key to solving the mystery. But where could they find more answers? The next morning, Emily decided to expand their search beyond the immediate area. She reasoned that if one set of artifacts had been buried near the facility, others might exist elsewhere. After consulting maps of the region, she suggested traveling north toward Greenland. The icy landscape there was known for preserving ancient relics, and local legends often spoke of strange findings buried beneath glaciers. Daniel agreed to accompany her, while Robert stayed behind to continue studying the existing artifacts. Before leaving, Emily reached out to Laura Bennett, a guide based in Greenland who specialized in leading expeditions through its rugged terrain. Laura was well respected among researchers for her knowledge of both geography and folklore, making her an ideal partner for the journey. A few days later, Emily and Daniel arrived in Nuuk, Greenland's capital, where Laura greeted them warmly. She was a wiry woman in her late 30s with sharp features and a no-nonsense attitude. Her dark hair was tied back in a tight braid. Her hands were calloused from years of handling ropes and tools. "You're lucky you caught me when you did," Laura said, as she loaded their gear onto a snowmobile. "I was about to head out. On my own trip? What exactly are you looking for?" Emily explained their findings so far: the artifacts, the carvings, and the theory about the Guardians. Laura listened intently, nodding occasionally but saying little until Emily finished. "That sounds like the old stories," Laura said finally. "People around here talk about the Watchers sometimes. They say these beings watched over humans long ago, keeping them safe from harm. Some claim they still do, though most folks think it's just superstition." "The Watchers?" Daniel asked, intrigued. "What do they look like?" Laura shrugged. "No one really knows. The tales describe them as lights in the sky or shadows, moving through the forest. Sometimes they're said to appear in dreams, giving warnings or advice. My grandmother used to tell me stories about them when I was a kid. Scared me half to death." Emily exchanged a glance with Daniel. "Could these Watchers be the same as the Guardians depicted in the carvings? If so, then the legends might provide valuable clues." Over the next several days, Laura led them across vast stretches of frozen wilderness, navigating treacherous ice fields and narrow mountain passes. The landscape was breathtakingly beautiful, but unforgiving, with biting winds that cut through layers of clothing and snowdrifts that threatened to swallow them whole. Despite the challenges, Laura moved with practiced ease, her instincts honed by years of experience. One afternoon, as they approached an abandoned settlement nestled in a valley, Laura pointed to a cluster of ruins partially buried under snow. "This place has been here for centuries," she said. "Some say it was built by early settlers, but others believe it predates them. Either way, it's worth checking out." The team split up to explore the site, each person searching for anything unusual. Emily wandered into what appeared to be the remains of a small temple, its walls crumbling, but still adorned with faded carvings. As she ran her fingers over the stone, she noticed faint traces of symbols similar to those on the artifacts they'd found in Alaska. "Daniel," called out, her voice echoing in the empty space. "Come see this." He hurried over, followed closely by Laura. Together, they examined the carvings, which told a story remarkably similar to the one they'd pieced together back at the lab. Humans stood alongside animals, surrounded by glowing shapes. But here, there was an additional detail: a series of concentric circles, radiating outward from the central figures. "What do you think those mean?" Daniel asked, pointing to the circles. "I'm not sure," Emily admitted. "Maybe it represents influence or protection spreading outward. Or perhaps it symbolizes connection between humans, animals, and the Guardians." Laura studied the carving silently, her brow furrowed in thought. Finally, she spoke. "There's a legend about a great web spun by the Watchers. It's said to connect all living things, binding them together in harmony. When the web was strong, the land flourished. But when it weakened," she trailed off, leaving the implication hanging in the air. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. Could the weakening of this web explain why humans no longer seemed to enjoy the same level of protection? And if so, what had caused it? The group set up camp inside one of the sturdier structures. Outside, the wind howled relentlessly, shaking the walls and sending flurries of snow swirling through cracks in the roof. Inside, the atmosphere was tense but focused. Emily, Daniel, and Laura huddled around a lantern, discussing their findings and speculating about the implications. If these guardians or watchers really existed, have had consequences, Emily said. Maybe that's why humans turned to technology and weapons to defend themselves. We lost our natural protectors and had to adapt. But why would they leave? Daniel asked. And where did they go? Laura shook her head. The stories don't say. Only that they vanished, leaving behind whispers and shadows. Some people believe they'll return someday, when the world needs them again. Emily stared into the flickering light of the lantern, her mind racing. If the Guardians had truly departed, then finding proof of their existence or learning how to reconnect with them might be the only way to restore balance to the natural world. But doing so would require uncovering even more secrets, ones that might lie hidden in the most remote corners of the planet. For now, though the team had made significant progress, the carvings in Greenland confirmed that the Guardians were more than just a local myth. They were part of a broader narrative that spanned continents and cultures. With each new discovery, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, bringing them closer to understanding humanity's unique place in the ecosystem. As exhaustion finally overtook them, Emily drifted off to sleep, her thoughts filled with images of glowing shapes and intricate webs. Somewhere deep within the frozen wilderness, the truth awaited, and she was determined to find it. Document Part 1 in the frozen wilderness of Alaska. Where icy winds howled across endless white landscapes, there stood a small research facility. It was tucked away in a remote corner of the world, far from cities and towns, surrounded only by snow-covered mountains and dense forests. The facility wasn't fancy, it was a collection of metal buildings, connected by narrow walkways, but it served its purpose well. For years, scientists had come here to study the mysteries of nature, focusing on animals that thrived in such harsh conditions. Dr. Emily Carter, a biologist with sharp eyes and an insatiable curiosity, had been working at the facility for nearly 6 months. She was a quiet woman, often lost in thought as she scribbled notes or peered through microscopes. Her assistant, Daniel Hughes, was the opposite: talkative, energetic, and always eager to share his ideas. Together, they made a good team, balancing each other out as they worked long hours trying to understand the delicate balance of predator and prey in the animal kingdom. On this particular morning, Emily sat hunched over her desk inside the lab. Outside, the temperature was well below freezing, but inside, the room was warm and filled with the hum of equipment. Papers were scattered across her desk, along with charts and graphs showing data collected over weeks of observation. Most of it focused on local wildlife: wolves hunting caribou, eagles swooping down to catch fish, foxes stalking smaller creatures like lemmings. Predator-prey relationships were the backbone of ecosystems, and Emily had spent her career studying them. But today, something unusual caught her attention. She flipped through one of the charts, comparing lists of predators and their respective prey. She noticed something odd. Humans weren't listed anywhere as prey. Of course, everyone knew that humans didn't have natural predators, at least not in the way deer feared wolves or rabbits feared hawks. But seeing it written so plainly on paper gave Emily pause. Why was that? What made humans different? Daniel, she called out, glancing toward the corner of the room where he was busy organizing samples. Come look at this. Over his boots clicking against the tiled floor, leaned over her shoulder, squinting at the chart. What am I looking at? He asked. Look closely, Emily said, pointing to the list. Every species we've studied has at least one predator. Even apex predators like bears or wolves can be threatened by larger animals under certain circumstances. But humans, nothing. No natural predator. Daniel frowned, rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah, I guess that's true. But isn't that just because we're at the top of the food chain? We've got tools, weapons, intelligence. We can defend ourselves against pretty much anything. Emily shook her head. That's not the whole story. They're apex predators. Don't rely on technology to stay safe. They evolve physical traits: sharp teeth, claws, speed that protect them from threats. Humans don't have any of those things. We're physically weaker than most large animals. So why haven't we become prey? Daniel shrugged. Maybe it's because we band together in groups. Strength in numbers, you know? It's more than that, Emily insisted. Her voice grew quieter, almost contemplative. Think about it. There are plenty of dangerous animals out there. Big cats, sharks, yet none of them see us as food. Not consistently, anyway. Bears might attack if they feel threatened, and sharks sometimes mistake swimmers for seals, but those incidents are rare. And when you think about it, humans are everywhere now. We live in jungles, deserts, oceans, mountains, you name it. We were easy targets. Wouldn't some species have adapted to hunt us by now? Daniel didn't have an answer for that. Instead, he pulled up a chair and sat beside her, staring at the chart. So what are you saying? That there's something unnatural about our place in the ecosystem? I don't know, Emily admitted. But it feels like there's a piece missing, something we haven't figured out yet. Over the next few days, Emily couldn't shake the question from her mind. During meals, while walking outside, even during conversations with Daniel, her thoughts kept circling back to the same idea. Why were humans the only species without natural predators? Was it luck? Evolution? Or was there another explanation entirely? One afternoon, while reviewing footage from a camera trap set up near the edge of the forest, Daniel suddenly called out excitedly, "Hey, Emily, you need to see this." She hurried over to his workstation where he was replaying J-Lot. Document. Part 5. The journey back to the research facility was long and quiet. The team had seen things they couldn't fully explain, and the weight of their encounter with the Sentinels lingered in the air like a storm cloud. Emily clutched the crystal tightly in her bag, its presence both comforting and unsettling. She replayed the Sentinel's words over and over in her mind. Asterisk, the web may yet be repaired. Yes. But the choice lies with you. What did it mean? And what kind of choice were they referring to? Laura drove the snowmobiles with practiced precision, but even she seemed distracted. Her usual confidence had been replaced by a cautious silence, as if she were weighing every word she spoke. Daniel sat beside Emily on the sled, his face pale and drawn. He hadn't said much since they left the cave, and when he finally broke the silence, his voice was low and hesitant. "What do you think they meant?" he asked, glancing at Emily. "About the web being repaired?" Emily sighed, pulling her scarf tighter around her neck to block the biting wind. "I don't know," she admitted. "But it sounds like we've done something that broke the balance between humans and nature. Maybe repairing the web means fixing whatever we messed up." Daniel nodded slowly, though he didn't look convinced. "And how exactly are we supposed to do that?" "It's not like we can just turn back time." "No," Emily agreed. "But maybe there's a way to reconnect with the Sentinels or at least understand why they left. If we can figure out what went wrong, maybe we can start making things right." Laura, who had been listening quietly from the front of the snowmobile, spoke up. "You're assuming they want us to fix it," she said. "What if they showed themselves to warn us, to tell us it's already too late?" The thought hung heavy between them, unspoken but undeniable. What if humanity's actions had caused irreparable damage? What if the Sentinel's appearance wasn't a sign of hope, but a final warning before something catastrophic happened? By the time they returned to the facility, exhaustion had set in. Robert greeted them at the door, his eager expression fading when he saw the somber looks on their faces. "What happened?" he asked, concern etched into his features. "It's complicated," Emily replied, brushing past him to place the crystal gently on the lab table. "We'll explain everything, but first, we need to examine this." For hours, the team pored over the crystal, studying its structure and the shifting symbols etched into its surface. Unlike anything they'd encountered before, the object seemed to hum faintly when touched, as if alive. Robert ran tests using specialized equipment, but the results were inconclusive. The crystal defied conventional analysis. It wasn't made of any known material. Its energy signature was unlike anything recorded in scientific databases. "This isn't just an artifact," Robert said finally, leaning back in his chair. "It's a message, a key maybe, but to what?" Emily frowned, staring at the crystal. Maybe it's a link to the Sentinels, a way to communicate with them again. But why give it to us? Daniel asked. And why now? No one had an answer. The mystery only deepened as they debated possible explanations. Meanwhile, Laura wandered to the window, gazing out at the frozen landscape. Something about the Sentinels' words troubled her more than she let on. She couldn't shake the feeling that their appearance wasn't random, that they had chosen this moment for a reason. That night, sleep eluded the group. Each member lay awake, lost in their own thoughts. For Laura, the legends her grandmother had shared came flooding back. Stories of watchers appearing in dreams, offering cryptic advice or dire warnings. As she drifted off, fragments of those tales mingled with memories of the Sentinels, glowing forms until reality blurred into something else entirely. When Laura opened her eyes, she wasn't in her bunk anymore. Instead, she stood in a vast, open field, bathed in soft golden light. The air smelled sweet, like wildflowers after rain, and the ground beneath her feet felt warm despite the absence of sunlight. In the distance, the horizon stretched endlessly, dotted with trees and rivers that sparkled like glass. Before she could process where or what this place was, the Sentinels appeared. They materialized silently, their translucent forms shimmering like heat waves. One stepped forward, closer than before, and Laura instinctively took a step back. "You have questions," the Sentinel intoned, its voice resonating in her chest. "Yes," Laura whispered, her throat dry. "Why are you showing yourselves to us now? What do you want?" "The threads of the web weaken further with each passing day," the Sentinel replied. "Your kind has forgotten its place within the balance. You consume without replenishing, destroy without rebuilding. The harmony once maintained by your ancestors is unraveling." Laura swallowed hard, her heart pounding. "Is that why you left? Because we stopped listening?" The Sentinel tilted its head slightly, as if considering her question, withdrew. "Because your kind chose separation over unity, yet some among you still carry the memory of the web. Through them, the connection may yet endure." "So, you're testing us?" Laura asked. "To see if we're worthy of your help?" Sentinel didn't answer directly. Instead, it extended a glowing hand toward her. Images flashed in her mind, humans working together to restore forests, planting crops alongside animals, living in harmony with the land. Then the vision shifted, showing cities crumbling, oceans rising, skies darkened by smoke. The contrast was stark, almost unbearable. "When the web breaks completely, chaos will follow," the Sentinel warned. "Repair it or face the consequences." Before Laura could respond, the dream faded, leaving her gasping awake in her bunk. Her sheets were damp with sweat, and her pulse raced as she tried to make sense of what she'd seen. Was it real? Just her mind processing the events of the day? She slipped out of bed and padded quietly to the lab, where Emily was still studying the crystal. The biologist looked up, startled, when Laura entered. "I had a dream," Laura blurted out, her voice trembling. "About the Sentinels. They showed me things. Visions of what could happen if we don't fix whatever's broken." Emily listened intently as Laura recounted the details, her expression growing increasingly serious. When Laura finished, Emily leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. "It sounds like they're giving us a chance," Emily said finally. "A chance to prove we're willing to change." "But how do we even begin?" "We start by sharing what we've learned," Laura suggested. "If these Sentinels are real, if the web exists, then people need to know. Maybe then they'll listen." "But who would believe us?" Daniel chimed in, having overheard their conversation. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "This isn't exactly the kind of thing you can publish in a journal or present at a conference. We don't have concrete evidence, not enough to convince anyone outside this room." "He's right," Robert added, joining them. "Even with the artifacts and the crystal, most people would dismiss this as nonsense. Without proof everyone can see, we risk looking like crackpots." Emily stared at the crystal, her mind racing. She knew they were right, the world wasn't ready for something this extraordinary, but keeping it secret felt wrong, like turning their backs on the very responsibility the Sentinels had entrusted to them. There has to be another way, she said softly. Something we haven't thought of yet. As the group continued discussing their options, none of them noticed the faint glow emanating from the crystal. Its light pulsed rhythmically, almost imperceptibly, as if responding to their uncertainty. Whatever it was, a tool, a message, or a test, it held answers they desperately needed. Answers that might determine not just their fate, but the future of humanity itself. For now, though, all they could do was wait. Wait and hope the next step would reveal itself. Document Part 6. The days following Laura's dream passed in a blur of activity. The team worked tirelessly, trying to piece together the fragments of information they had gathered. Emily spent hours analyzing the crystal, searching for patterns, or hidden meanings in its shifting symbols. Daniel scoured maps and historical records, looking for references to similar artifacts or legends about the Sentinels. Robert focused on translating the carvings from Greenland, cross-referencing them with earlier findings to create a clearer narrative. Meanwhile, Laura wrestled with the vivid images from her dream, replaying them in her mind like scenes from a movie she couldn't turn off. Despite their efforts, progress was slow. The crystal remained an enigma, its secrets locked away behind layers of complexity that defied conventional understanding. And while the carvings provided valuable context, they left many questions unanswered. What exactly was the web the Sentinels spoke of? How had humanity broken it? And what would happen if it unraveled completely? One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, Emily decided to take a break. She stepped outside, breathing in the crisp Arctic air. The cold stung her cheeks, but she welcomed it, cleared her head, grounding her in the moment. As she walked along the edge of the facility, her thoughts drifted back to the Sentinels. Warning, asterisk repair it, or face the consequences. The words echoed in her mind, heavy with implication. What kind of consequences were they talking about? Natural disasters, extinction-level events, or something more subtle, a gradual collapse of ecosystems until life on Earth became unsustainable. Whatever it was, it felt inevitable unless humanity changed course. But how could they inspire such change without solid proof? As she turned to head back inside, Emily noticed something strange near the tree line. A faint glow pulsed among the shadows, barely visible against the darkening forest. At first she thought it might be a trick of the light, a reflection off snow or ice, but as she squinted, the glow grew brighter, almost beckoning her closer. Curiosity got the better of her. She grabbed a flashlight from the supply shed and ventured toward the trees, her boots crunching softly in the snow. The closer she got, the more distinct the glow became. It wasn't uniform. Instead, it flickered like fireflies dancing in sync. When she reached the source, she froze, her breath catching in her throat. Embedded in the base of a massive pine tree was another shard of crystal smaller than the one they'd found in the cave, but unmistakably similar. Its surface shimmered with the same intricate symbols, though they seemed dimmer, less vibrant. Carefully, Emily knelt down and examined it. Unlike the first crystal, this one didn't hum or pulse with energy. It felt dormant, as if waiting to be awakened. "What are you doing out here?" Daniel's voice startled her, and she spun around to see him standing a few feet away. "I found something wary." "I found something," Emily said, gesturing toward the crystal. "It's like the one we brought back, but different." Daniel approached cautiously, shining his own flashlight on the object. "Do you think it's connected to the others?" "It has to be," Emily replied. "But why would there be two? And why is this one so much weaker?" Before Daniel could respond, the crystal suddenly flared to life, bathing the surrounding area in soft blue light. Startled, both of them stumbled backward, shielding their eyes. When the glow subsided, the symbols etched into the crystal began to shift, forming patterns that matched those in the carvings. Then, as quickly as it had activated, the crystal went dark again. "That was expected," Daniel muttered. Staring at the now inert object, Emily nodded, her heart racing. "We need to bring it back to the lab. Maybe combining it with the other crystal will tell us something." Back inside, the team gathered around the table where the original crystal rested. Emily placed the new shard beside it, watching closely for any reaction. For several moments, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the larger crystal began to emit a faint hum, its surface glowing faintly. The smaller crystal responded in kind, its dim light growing brighter until both objects radiated in unison. "This is incredible," Robert whispered, his eyes wide with awe. "It's like they're communicating." "But what are they saying?" Daniel asked, leaning closer. No one had an answer. The crystals continued to glow, their lights pulsing in rhythmic waves. Emily reached out tentatively, placing her hand on the larger crystal. Instantly, a surge of warmth spread through her fingertips, followed by a flood of images, flashes of ancient forests, vast oceans teeming with life, skies filled with birds. She saw humans living alongside animals, working together in harmony. Then the vision shifted, showing desolate landscapes scarred by pollution, rivers running dry, and cities swallowed by storms. Gasping, Emily pulled her hand away, breaking the connection. Her chest rose and fell rapidly as she tried to process what she'd seen. "What did you see?" Laura asked, concern in her voice. Emily hesitated, choosing her words carefully. I think these crystals hold memories. Memories of the past and warnings about the future." Robert frowned, scribbling notes furiously. "Memories? You mean like recordings?" maybe Emily admitted. "Or maybe they're fragments of the web itself, the balance the Sentinels talked about. If we can decode them, we might understand how everything fits together." The team spent the next several hours experimenting with the crystals, trying to trigger more visions or extract additional data. They discovered that when the crystals were aligned in specific ways, the symbols on their surfaces formed coherent sequences. Robert worked tirelessly to translate these sequences, piecing together fragments of a language that seemed both ancient and alien. By morning, he had made significant progress. "Listen to this," he said, holding up a sheet of paper covered in scribbles. "Based on the patterns, I think the crystals are describing humanity's relationship with the natural world, specifically our genetic makeup." "Our genetics?" Daniel asked, confused. "What does DNA have to do with any of this?" "I'm not sure yet," Robert admitted. "But there are recurring references to something called the mark. It's described as a unique trait embedded in human DNA, one that doesn't exist in any other species." Emily's eyes widened. "A biological marker. Are you saying humans were engineered?" "It's possible," Robert replied. "If the Sentinels or whoever created the web wanted to ensure humanity's survival, they might have altered our genetics to make us compatible with the system. This mark could be what allowed us to coexist peacefully with other species." Laura shook her head, struggling to grasp the implications. "So you're telling me humans aren't entirely natural? That we were designed to fit into some kind of cosmic balance?" "It would explain a lot," Emily said quietly. "Why we don't have natural predators. Why we've been able to adapt to nearly every environment on Earth. Even our intelligence, it could all tie back to this genetic modification." "But if that's true," Daniel interjected, "then what happened to the mark?"
Oh, why isn't
"It working anymore?" Robert hesitated, flipping through his notes. "There's a section here that mentions corruption, something about the mark fading over time due to neglect or misuse. It's vague, but it suggests that humanity's actions weaken the connection between us and the web." Emily stared at the crystals, her mind racing. If the Sentinels had indeed engineered humanity to maintain balance, I think their departure made sense. They hadn't abandoned Earth out of spite or indifference. They'd left because humanity had stopped fulfilling its role. Without the mark functioning properly, the web unraveled, leaving the planet vulnerable to chaos. "We need to figure out how to restore the mark," Emily said finally. "If we can reactivate a Tor, at least understand how it works, we might be able to repair the web." "But how?" Laura asked. "It's not like we can just rewrite our DNA." "No," Emily agreed. "But maybe the crystals can help. If they're part of the system, they might hold the key to reactivating the mark." The group fell silent, each member grappling with the enormity of the task ahead. They were scientists, researchers, explorers, not miracle workers. Yet the fate of humanity seemed to rest in their hands. Somewhere within the crystals lay the answers they needed. All they had to do was find them. As they resumed their work, the weight of responsibility settled heavily on their shoulders. The Sentinels had given them a chance, a way to fix what had been broken. Whether they succeeded or failed depended entirely on their ability to decipher the mysteries of the crystals. And time, it seemed, was running out.